We have come to almost to the end. We have one more song to do, and I just want to tell you briefly that this song is a song that came out of a fete we played in New York about 3 years ago. Maybe some of you were there, I don't know. But it was a night when it was a magic night. It was a Guyana night, and people were nostalgic about Guyana. And I was moved by it, and went back to Cayman and wrote a song. We come across the Caribbean Sea, mother, father, picnic, and we settle down in GT. Why ho! We sat down in the pouring rain, in the hot sun and the sugar cane, and we planted the rice and cane. Why ho! Yes, we take off the boots and we put on the roots. Why ho! So remember the crabwood that grow in Essequibo is real. And the 6 o'clock tea and the sake rinky is we own. And the lava that run from the Guyana is we own. And the wall of a post on the quarantine coast is we own. I had the wandering crab is we own. Truly Benab is we own. Guyana is we own. Frank Corona is we own. Arapaima is we own. Guyana is we own. Whether grove or whether pleasant, we know the pagua and confidence, and we know how to wine and prance. Why oh, and they celebrate Diwali, and when it's time for Mashramani, it's party, party, party. Why oh, yes, we know how to get to be underwear wet. Why oh, and so the crabwood that grows in Essequibo is real. And the 6 o'clock beat, the sake rinky is we own. And the lava that run from the Guyana is we own. And them all of a post on the quarantine coast is we own. Partner Penus is we own. 5 finger juice is we own. Guyana is we own. The Simatu vine is we own. And the masquerade wine is we own. Guyana is we own. Listen to me, chip, sugar cake, and saltfish and bake is we own. Mutton curry and 2 perlaury is we own. Or be a nice black pudding and rice is we own. Coconut metachi and wiri is we own. Babolala rich and with the quota in the hand is we own. Alexander Willie and the blue dashiki is we own. Frank Diminis and the boom boom cheese is we own. And the fella in tongue namely Funky Funk is we own. Daytime or night, don't we criticize it. This is our home, we love it. and we mean to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not no one to sake, not one rice bread, not one for us, not a blade of grass, not one golden apple, not one jamun, not a drop of water from the bummer road, not one breadfruit, not one white tea, not one guinea, not one lime tree, not a one sapodilla, not one Caroline, not one sugar cane, or a dry of lime, not one sherriga, not one cracate, not one guinea, not one blue sake, not one rice bread. Venezuela, all yours, not a blade of grass. This land is our land now. We're gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow, but never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we're moving from here. Make no mistake. So we ain't giving up the mountain, we ain't giving up the tree, we ain't giving up the river that belongs to we. Not the one blue sake, not the one rice grain, not one for us, not a blade of grass. Every time we sing this song,
oh well, good evening and welcome to Politics 101 on a Thursday evening. Good to be with you live. I know we've been doing some rebroadcasts over the last couple of days, but we're back live. Some challenges here and there, but we are live. We are live tonight. We are live tonight. Welcome to Politics 101. It's good to be here. It's good to be here live. All of you are joining us from Guyana, from inside of Guyana, all of Guyana, all of Guyana. Welcome to Politics 101. Those of you who are joining us from outside of Guyana, you're still in Guyana. Whether you are in the wider Caribbean, whether you are in North America, in Europe, good night, good morning to those of you who are joining us from Europe, from the United Kingdom. Welcome to Politics 101. Every one of you, please share the link we are on live tonight. These are times, trying times, serious times for us as Guyanese. We've never had it easy. There's always been rough for us, and it continues to be rough. We come to you tonight as we mourn the loss of 5 of our soldiers, 5 of our brave men who died in that tragic crash by the helicopter in the hinterland in Essequibo. Our condolences go out to their families. They gave their lives in defense of our country because they were in the process of defending our Guyana, defending our Guyana. Our condolences to their families, their friends, their community, the defense force. These are trying times. These are serious times. And we've got to put it in perspective. We've never had it easy. We are not getting it easy. Welcome to Politics 101 on a Thursday night. Please spread the link. I'm here live. And we got some things to talk about tonight. Brother Bob, after he was shot, he wrote those two memorable songs, Ambush in the Night, All Guns Aiming at Me Now, and the other one, So Much Things to Say, So Much Things to Say. The turn of the language, the oral tradition. And tonight we have so much things to say. So much things to say. Welcome to all of you. Please share the link and let everyone know we're on. We're called upon in these times to bear witness on our own behalf and to remind ourselves and remind the world that we are human beings. Brother Bob asks, "Didn't my people before me slave for this country? We deserve to live in peace, all of us. The challenges are great. The challenges are great. But it is the test of the nation, fledgling as we are, we are being tested. Stormy tonight, stormy. But we've got to weather this storm, and in the process, we've got to continue to speak truth to power. The news is there. All of you are informed. The news is for the journalists, for the newsmen and women. The analysis, the perspective must come from deep within our Guyanese belly. 2 mornings ago, I was on a program, a radio program, emanating out of Antigua and Barbuda. I was on with Dr. Mark Corton, discussing the developments vis-a-vis Venezuela, as we have been doing since this crisis took a deadly turn. And one of the questions posed to us was whether the Guyanese people are mobilized. Because there we were mobilizing Caribbean people. And quite rightly, we were asked whether Guyanese people are mobilized as we face the aggression of our neighbor, Venezuela. And we hear mutterings from our other neighbor, Venezuela. Suriname, inside of Suriname, not from the Surinamese government, but from one of the political parties there. As you know, Suriname has made claim to part of our territory also, the New River Triangle. We settled the maritime boundaries with them, but the claim to our land by Suriname is still unsettled. That's raising its head. We are here in serious times. We are here in serious times. Are the Guyanese people mobilized? We were asked. And that's a very serious question. Very serious question. Never before have those magical words penned by Dave Martins, not a blade of grass. Never before have those words meant so much in real time. Meant so much in real time. Good evening to all of you. It's good to be back live. It's good to be back live. We had some challenges, but we are here as we have to be here to walk through these times. The question before us is, how do we move? How do we move? How do we move as a country, as a national community? How do we move? Our condolences to the 5 soldiers who lost their lives, the first martyrs of the struggle to defend our sovereignty, the first martyrs. I'm not known to be always politically correct. And I will say some things tonight that will not be politically correct. But they have to be said. The first thing I want to say tonight is that I do not subscribe to the view that because Venezuela is at the door, all party politics, all criticisms of the government must stop. All struggle for equality, equity, and justice in our country must stop. Oh no. In fact, I do believe that we must up the ante, not tone it down. I submit that our government is as much part of the problem as Venezuela is. I submit. We all have heard, little boy can't do big man walk. Square peg never fit in wrong hole. We are now a petrol state. We are being challenged by our more powerful neighbor, militarily powerful neighbor. There is a time and a season for everything. And these times demand an appropriate government, appropriate governance. And I have to be frank with you all. I don't think Guyana is being served well by this government. I don't think Guyana is being served well by this government in our time of crisis. We are not being served well. We are not being governed well. And so I am not prepared to do what some people, including some of our own supporters, are saying: we must stop doing politics. I've made the point already. I do not think this government cares too much about the defense of this country. And that's being demonstrated every day. We are not being served well by our government as we face down the aggression of Venezuela. And note I say Venezuela, I'm not into this nonsense about Maduro. Oh, Maduro is a madman, and Maduro is this, and Maduro is that. Politics are not about individuals. Individuals are products of something larger than themselves. Maduro is a product of something larger. Let's be clear. Many of us supported Maduro. When Venezuela was being pressured by the United States, many of us in Guyana, including the present government, stood with Venezuela under Chavez and Maduro as the United States came down on them. We stood with them in a principled position, an anti-imperialist position. So don't let us behave today all of a sudden that we discover that Maduro is a madman. We didn't always think that he was a madman. Let's be clear and let's be frank with you all. Maduro is not a madman. He's quite sane. What he and his government are doing are calculated politics. He's not a madman. Our government is trying to minimize the gravity of this situation. It cannot be minimized and it should not be minimized. Our government was not prepared and was not preparing our country for this moment. You can have intelligence mishaps. we must make allowances for that. All governments have intelligence failures. That Venezuela, whether under Chavez or previous leaders, whether under Maduro or previous leaders, Venezuela has always been a clear and present danger. And our government, this government, has been so busy bringing blows to its opponents in Guyana, so busy concerned about remaining in power, that it did not prepare our country for this. I hear the analysts all of us, I hear us say, oh, what is happening has to do with the fact that Maduro has lost the confidence of the Venezuelan people. He has lost support. And he's using the Guyana issue to whip up some political support in Venezuela so that he can win the election next year or whenever it's called. And that is partly true. But what the analysts are not saying is that the government in Guyana is doing the same damn thing. First of all, there was no military strategy. 2/3 of your territory has been claimed by your neighbor for the last 60 years. Yet you went along your merry way as though that didn't exist. Yes, it's at the ICJ, but we must know that settlement before the ICJ is part of the issue. If your territory is being claimed, what is your strategy? It is not the first time that Venezuela has upped the ante. They've been doing that from 1962 to now. Any government, especially in a time when we found oil and we are a petro state, we must know that that would lead to some kind of aggressive response from Venezuela. We must have known that. We should have known that, and we should have prepared a strategy for that. Our government did not. Our government was busy oppressing its own people at home and leaving our borders wide open. That fact has to be figured into any analysis. I am going down the road of saying, no, it's not the time to discuss a certain kind of politics. Now is the time. And when Venezuela sounded the bell a couple of months ago, our government still wasn't prepared. It said, oh, let's call the opposition leader. And let's get the opposition leader to stand with us against Venezuela. As it turned out, they called the opposition leader not to discuss a common military and political strategy against Venezuela, they called him to give their supporters the impression that all are we together. Just as Maduro is using the Venezuelan issue for internal political capital, the present government is using the Venezuelan issue for internal political capital. There is no national response from Guyana. There's a government response, a weak government response, but no national response. We've seen PPP rallies. That's what we've seen. Whether it's in Region 2 or Region 3 or region wherever, we've seen PPP rallies. A national response would have seen, if you're going down the road of rallies, national rallies. And national rallies would be rallies of all the ethnic groups in Guyana, all the political groups of Guyana, and addressed by all the political leaders in Guyana, in particular, the two major leaders of the two major political parties. We have not seen that. There is not a national response, just as Maduro is using the border issue for internal political survival. The PPP government in Guyana is doing the same damn thing. You all tell them, David, I say so. There's no national response because we don't have a national government. We have a one-party government that is unprepared to bring in the other part of the national community to devise a national response. Don't tell me nonsense about unity and togetherness when you are telling, when you out there holding PPP rallies. There's a crisis of governance in Guyana. We have seen it with the oil and gas. We don't have a government that could manage the complexities of becoming a petro state, the complexities of a petro state. How do you deal with Exxon and the big companies? How do you protect your environment? How do you get as much for your people as you can? How do you deal with all of these complex issues that come with being a petro state? The PPP's response is party survival. Use the rise of oil and gas to cement the PPP in office. Use the oil and gas proceeds to raid the communities of your opponents and buy votes. Use the oil and gas proceeds to bribe Guyanese people, including the supporters of the government. No national strategy for oil and gas. Any national strategy for oil and gas would have had a Venezuela component. Now that we have oil and gas wealth, what about Venezuela? That is a question that would have been on the table and would have been part of a national strategy. Where is the national strategy? There is none. Maduro and his government can get away without the national strategy. And let me explain why. One, because Venezuelans across the political divide believe that Essequibo belongs to them. There's already a national consensus on this issue in Venezuela that goes beyond emotions. In Guyana, there's a national consensus that Essequibo belongs to us, but that exists at the emotional level. Our government has not translated that into something more than emotions. Where is the education in our schools? We are now seeing people trying to go into the schools to talk to school children, and the government is even stopping opposition people from doing that. Where is the infusion in our education system of our sovereignty over Essequibo? None. You don't build a national consensus by sitting and chatting. So there is no national consensus in our education system. There is no national consensus inside of our institutions of governance. No national consensus in the National Assembly. It is a bipartisan, multi-partisan institution by its very nature and its very makeup. Where is the permanent committee in the National Assembly? Where is the permanent or the select committee on Venezuela in the National Assembly? Prior governments could have been excused for not having a permanent policy vis-a-vis Venezuela. They could have been excused. But this government cannot be excused because this government is governing when we have become a petro state. Once you become a petro state in a part of your territory that your neighbor is claiming, you have to have a permanent strategy. Where is the permanent committee on Venezuela? Where is the select committee of Venezuela on Venezuela in the National Assembly? None. Maduro can get away without bringing in the opposition in Venezuela. Why? Because there is a national consensus in Venezuela. Secondly, Maduro controls a powerful army in Venezuela. He may not have the opposition, but he has the army. A powerful army. Tanks. 200,000 men and women in uniform. Advanced technology. In Guyana, what is our army? Small, not well equipped with the hardware and the technology, But more than that, because of our ethnic problem, our army is made up of people of mostly one ethnic group, and the government of Guyana has declared war on that ethnic group. Not David Hinds is not saying it's declared war on the army, but it has declared war on the ethnic group from which it recruits its soldiers. Damn you. I tell you all, I'm going to say something that are not politically correct. And I hear they're talking about treason, you know. I'm going to disturb them tonight. Maduro has the support of the army. Look at the government of Venezuela, made up mostly of army people. Maduro can get away without a national consensus. But in Guyana, you have a largely Indian Guyanese government and a largely African Guyanese army. In Guyana, you have a government that has socialized its supporters to believe that the army is evil. Jagdio made that famous speech in which he told his supporters what to do about the army. The PPP has socialized Indian Guyanese to believe the army is their enemy. What that means is the very nature of our society and the very nature of our politics makes us vulnerable when it comes to dealing with military aggression. How does a government which has socialized its people, its supporters, against the army? No, the army is an arm of the state. And all citizens are suspicious of armies and police and military, all citizens, regardless of ethnicity. No people have more grouses against the police than black people. And the police is made up mostly of black people. So as an arm of the state, as the coercive arm of the state, citizens are generally suspicious of armies and police forces. Let's get that straight. All citizens. But I am making the point here tonight that the PPP as a party over the years has socialized its supporters to believe that the army and the police are against them for ethnic reasons, not just as an arm of the state, but they're against them for here are black people with arms in their hands. And so Indian Guyanese have ethnic suspicions of the army and the police. They don't even want to join the army. They don't even want to join the police force. The PPP tried to get them to do so when it came back to power in 1992. They vumps on them. A lot of people don't want to say it. But when they went into Indian Guyanese communities and tried to get them to sign up for the army and the police, they were told that that black man walk. I'm talking truth tonight. So now we are virtually at war with an Indian Guyanese government that has socialized its supporters and as part of its own ideology is ethnically suspicious of the army. So whereas Maduro controls his army, our government does not control its army in the same way. Yes, as an arm of the state, it controls the army because it controls the leadership of the army, and it can tell the army what to do and so on and so forth. But politically, it does not have the same kind of control over the army as Maduro has over the Venezuelan army. All you hear me tonight, because I'm talking some truth. In the absence of that, it makes sense to bring into your war room the people who have control over the army. And I'm speaking here ethnically. We know that the army and the police fought overwhelmingly for the PNC. And you're at war. And these are the people you want to go out there and fight for you. Why not bring in the leader of the PNC into your war room? It makes eminent sense to me. I am never going to be working out any strategy in Guyana as it relates to sugar and not bring in the PPP and GAU. I have criticized the coalition government for that. I think they made a big mistake. And I've said that then, I've said that before, and I'm saying it again tonight. You are not going to right-size sugar, however well-intentioned your strategy is, without in an active and serious way bringing in GAU and the PPP. There was some of that under the coalition government, but I thought they should have done more. And I'm saying tonight, you are not going to wage a military response to Venezuela with an army of many African Guyanese without engaging in a serious way the leadership of African Guyanese. This government has refused to do that. My condolences, our condolences to the 5 soldiers, the first 5 martyrs, the first martyrs of our war in defense of our sovereignty. The first 5 martyrs. We've always been accustomed to martyrs, whether it's the Enmo martyrs, whether it was the Wismar, Mackenzie, Linden martyrs. These 5 men who lost their lives today on the battlefield, The war is not yet as hot. It's a cold war, but it's not so cold. We are in a warm war with Venezuela. Those 5 men, 5 beautiful brothers, 5 beautiful brothers, 5 beautiful brothers, 5 beautiful brothers. You all hear me. The Americans, I'm not dog whistling. I'm saying it again. 5 beautiful brothers, first martyrs of our revolution, our fight. Our fight to keep the sovereignty of our country intact. our condolences to their families. We cannot stand up to Venezuela as a single party. This government, first of all, it is not a representative government of Guyana. It is not. It will never be. It can spend billions of dollars trying to buy votes. It will never be a representative government of Guyana. And even if you fool yourself when you play in politics, when you are faced with the aggression as we are faced from Venezuela, you can't fool yourself anymore. You do not represent the vast majority of Guyanese. Bring in the blasted representatives of the other half. If we're going to make anything of this fight against Venezuela, it has to be beyond emotions about unity. What unity? Unity in action is the real unity. We're asking the rest of the world to unite with us. We're asking CARICOM to unite with us. And we're not asking our own people to actively be united. Our government is taking us down the road of losing to Venezuela. We can only win Venezuela with a national response, with a national community response. Not an hypothetical unity, but an active unity. Who best to get black men and women to put on that uniform and to face the marauders from Venezuela? Who best to mobilize them than the people that they have trust in, the leaders they have trust in? I submitted tonight that those men and women in uniform have more trust in Aubrey Norton than they have in Irfan Ali and the other one, Jack Dew. They've demonstrated that the way they vote. I'm being politically incorrect tonight. Jail me quickly. Clang the illiterate iron door. If freedom writes no happier alphabet. I'm quoting Martin Carter. You all know I like my poems. If we are going to face down Venezuela, we don't have tanks. We don't have hundreds of thousands of men and women in uniform. But we have to have a military strategy. We have to have a military strategy. And the military strategy has to involve what we have, an army of mainly black men and women who do not have confidence in the government of the day. They should have confidence in the government of the day. They should. But in Guyana, our governments are one-party governments with narrow visions, not national vision. Oh my God. In England, when Hitler turned up the heat, what did Churchill do? He called in Attlee. And the Labour Party and former war government. The model I'm advancing is not something that's coming out of the top of my head. And England was mostly white people. And yet they recognize that when you're facing an enemy as Hitler was, even though there was national consensus along ethnic lines, they still brought in everybody. Here in Guyana, we are so divided. Most of it through no fault of ours. And yet, we have a government that is keeping out the majority of this half of the representatives of the people. Half of the representatives of the people. I don't want the parliamentary opposition to speak like me. My political tradition may be slightly different. I make no bones about where I stand. I come from the radical tradition of Guyanese and Caribbean politics. And I don't beat people if they don't come from that tradition. But at some point, those divisions between radical and moderates and so on have to be rubbed out. And the opposition have to stop. They have to stop. Behaving as though we have some national response. I heard one of my comrades on the opposition side, someone who I love, said there's no daylight between the government and the opposition on this issue. And I know that person meant well, but there is a lot of daylight between the two sides on the Venezuelan issue. I happen to believe the opposition has a more progressive approach to dealing with the Venezuelan issue. I happen to believe that the opposition is much more pro-national. The PPP comes from a tradition that doesn't see Guyana in civilizational sense. Guyana is not a civilization for the PPP ideologues. Guyana is a place where you transact business and you make money and you get rich. For some of us, Guyana is a civilization first and foremost. A place where our bloods and our bones and our navel string are buried. Guyana is first a civilization and then a place where you make a living. And for us, it has to be a civilization because we come from a line of people who help to civilize the space. By that I mean who helped in an active way to turn Guyana from the wild slave coast where they bought people and killed people to a place where people could live as human beings. That is why we start first with Guyana as a civilization. I don't think our PPP brothers and sisters start there. The investment in Guyana as a civilization is not part of the traditional praxis of the PPP. We are not. Comrades, brothers and sisters, we are not being served well At a time of war, we are not being served well by our government. Partly because the government, by its very nature, cannot mount a national response by its very nature, first. And secondly, a government that is not prepared to move beyond its limitations and to strike a national blow against Venezuela. A lot of us have been doing our work. I've been up and down the place in the Caribbean, in North America, giving interviews, educating the rest of the region, mobilizing the rest of the region to stand with us. I do that as an academic, as an activist. But at the end of the day, the government of Guyana, our government of Guyana has to lead the way. And the present government, as I said, has built-in limitations. And it has ideological limitations when it comes to defending the sovereignty of Guyana. Sisters and brothers, these are serious times. Many of us are speculating whether Venezuela will come over the border, whether it will this, whether it will that. We know what Venezuela has done. It's called a referendum. And after the referendum, it has made some governmental decisions. Whether the decisions are practical, they've made them. Venezuela has a strategy. And my study, my understanding of international relations and international politics says to me that what Venezuela is doing is setting the stage for a situation whereby it gets something out of what it has done. We can say now that Venezuela knows that it is not going to get 2/3 of Guyana's territory. It perhaps knows that it will not get any of Guyana's territory. But there's more than territory involved here. Venezuela is setting the stage to get something. And that is why Venezuela is saying that it does not recognize the jurisdiction of the ICJ. And is stressing the Geneva Agreement. Venezuela wants to eventually get to the point where it sits down with Guyana or CARICOM or whoever and get something. But in order to do so, it has to weaken Guyana's case, one. It has to mobilize a national community in Venezuela. Let me repeat that. It has to mobilize a national community in Venezuela. It has to weaken Guyana's case. It has to create fear among Guyanese. It has to work on our divisions in Guyana. And so the hope is that it could get something. the Surinamis, the Suriname party, sees an opportunity. Guyana is likely to be on its knees. And it is now attaching its territorial claim to the Venezuelan claim. Everybody's going to try to see what they can get. Remember the 1899 arbitration, the 1899 agreement. Venezuela got a lot. It got the Orinoco, which it wanted. The Brazilians got something. Theoretically, British gave up a lot in the 1899 arbitration. And my theory is that the Venezuelans are trying to put that back on the table to try to see what it can get, what more it can get. What is Guyana's strategy? Our government has not laid that out to our people. What is our strategy? I submit here tonight that a national strategy can only come from a national community and a national commitment that must include all the forces in Guyana. The ICJ will rule in Guyana's favor. But all the ICJ will be saying is the 1899 agreement is valid. Venezuela can decide it will agree to that or not agree to that. The ICJ is not an enforcer body. The United Nations may have the capacity to enforce, but we know the reality of the United Nations. The Security Council runs things. We have to ask ourselves, where will Russia and China stand on a conflict between Venezuela and Guyana? We know where the American stands today. If there is a new president in America tomorrow, we don't know where America will stand after then. Sisters and brothers, this shit is real. And it shouldn't be David Hines who should be laying it out, or certainly not in my capacity. We should have a national government that is laying the realities out. I told you all I'm going to be politically incorrect tonight. And I intend to continue because I have just begun this conversation. Tomorrow night, I'm going to continue it. Because there's some things that we have to be real about. And our government is not being real with us. Our condolences to the families of the 5 brothers, the 5 martyrs, who laid down their lives fighting for our sovereignty. Five beautiful brothers defending their country. Five beautiful brothers defending their country. Because they come from the seed of coffee. and Atta and Akabre, Guyana is their civilization. They gave their lives. Give thanks. I'm not trying to provoke anything. I'm being real. 5 beautiful brothers who didn't shirk their responsibility, who didn't intentionally seek making money over defense of their country. They defended their country. They put on the uniform, knowing that they will not make money. They will not become rich. By God. By God. Black people can't do business. They can defend. And they've defended. And they, in this hour, I love you all. Not unconditionally, because there are times when I question whether we are right. But I love you all immensely. Those 5 brothers did not become rich. They did not make billions. But their lives are worth more than gold.